Most kids got fridge art. Crayon messes slapped onto refrigerators like museum exhibits of love. Me? I got a lecture about how markers were a luxury. When I was 6, I drew a picture of our family dog in sidewalk chalk on the driveway. My dad hosed it off before the neighbors could see. "Don't advertise weakness," he muttered. I didn't even know what that meant. I just wanted to draw Bruno because he had one ear that never flopped right. It looked funny. Real. Like something worth remembering. My mom once said I had an eye. My dad said I had too much time on my hands. Guess who bought me art supplies for Christmas? No one. I got socks. Every year. In varying shades of beige, like even color was too risky. We lived in a one-story ranch house in Ohio that somehow had more rules than rooms. My dad was a mechanic who treated every object like it owed him rent, including me. If it didn't make money, it didn't matter. And if it did make money, it better not make a mess doing it. I started sketching in secret. Ripped pages out of junk mail, receipts, anything that didn't look like a proper waste of resources. I'd use the backs of pizza flyers to draw quick portraits of people at school. My classmates started asking me to sketch them. Some even paid me with snacks. I once traded a drawing of Mrs. Holman's dog for a turkey sandwich and a pack of grape gushers. That was the first time I got paid for art. The second time was in high school, when a kid named Devonte slipped me a crumpled $5 bill and said, "Draw me like one of your French girls." He was joking. I still did it. He taped it inside his locker like a masterpiece. But it wasn't until senior year that I said the words out loud. We were at the dinner table, me, Mom, Dad, and the sound of him chewing with his mouth open like life owed him something. "I think," I said, carefully slicing my Salisbury steak, "I want to study art." Silence. My mom paused, mid-potato scoop. My dad didn't even look up. He just stabbed his green beans and said, "Then you better learn to starve." I thought he was joking. He wasn't. "Art," he continued, "is a hobby. Not a job. You want to make stick figures for a living, that's your business. Just don't come crawling back when you can't pay rent." I opened my mouth. Closed it. Tried again. "But it's what I'm good at." "You're good at being 15 minutes late to everything," he snapped. "Doesn't mean you make a career out of it." That was that. I stopped talking about art. At least around him. Mom gave me a half-smile the next day and slipped me a $20 bill with a whispered, "Just in case you want supplies." I used it to buy charcoal pencils and a cheap sketch pad from the local craft store. Drew every night. Sometimes until my fingers cramped. It was like breathing, quiet, unnoticed, necessary. College wasn't on the table. Not really. My parents made just enough to disqualify me from most aid, and not enough to help. I got a job at a local grocery store, then another at a warehouse. Stocked shelves by day, unloaded trucks by night. Saved what I could. Sketched what I saw, old hands gripping cans of soup, tired eyes in fluorescent light, forklifts and forgotten faces. I filled dozens of notebooks. No one saw them. Until one day, while waiting for the bus, I was sketching an old man asleep on the bench. A woman in a business suit leaned over my shoulder and said, "That yours?" I nodded. "You ever show in a gallery?" I blinked. "What?" "A gallery. Art show. Exhibition." I looked down at my sketchpad, covered in graphite smudges and coffee stains. "No," I said. She smiled, handed me a card, and walked off before I could read the fine print. But I didn't call her. Not yet. Because the voice in my head was louder. Better learn to starve. So I did. Quietly. And I kept drawing. I kept that gallery card in my wallet, tucked behind a half-punched coffee card I could only afford to use once a month. Not because I planned to call her, but because it felt like something real people carry. Like laminated hope. After high school, life didn't fall apart. It just stretched out. Days blurred. My grocery job turned into warehouse work, which turned into janitor shifts at the rec center. I ate cheap pasta, learned how to clean puke from gym mats, and filled sketchbooks when no one was looking. Dad kept pretending it was a phase. Like I was growing out of drawing the same way you grow out of superhero pajamas. Still doodling? He'd ask, not really asking. Let me know when someone pays you to scribble. I stopped showing him anything. But one night while I was wiping down the vending machines at the rec center, a guy named Malik, part-time trainer, full-time chaos, wandered by as I was sketching an old treadmill. Yo, he said, pointing. You drew that? I nodded. That's fire. Have you ever done shows? Shows? I blinked. Like art pop-ups. You rent a booth, put your stuff out, maybe sell a piece or two. My girlfriend runs one downtown next month. Real chill, not pretentious or anything. You'd fit in. He handed me a flyer with neon fonts and paint splatters. It was the first time someone suggested I belonged somewhere, without laughing. Later that night, I dug out my better sketchbooks. Not the ones with doodles of coworkers eating instant noodles or my grocery list in the margins. The real ones. The pages I'd redrawn 4, 5, 6 times until the lines felt like mine. I showed one to Mom while she was folding laundry. She sat on the couch and flipped through slowly, her fingers hovering over each page like she didn't want to wrinkle the air. When she got to the end, she closed it gently. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For not standing up for you more. That hit like a wrecking ball in a whisper. She didn't say, You're amazing, or This is beautiful. She just said what I didn't know I needed to hear, that I wasn't crazy for wanting this. That night, I started an Instagram page. 3 posts, a sleeping man on the bus, an old boot from the warehouse, and a crumpled vending machine sketch. I used simple captions like, Sketch number 22, and, Even broken things have shape. It got 3 likes. 1 from a spam bot. 1 from a guy I hadn't talked to since 10th grade. And 1 from Mom, who made an account just to support me. Progress. Art didn't pay the bills. My warehouse job did. But art paid in something else. Peace. Focus. A reason to stay awake after 10 p.m. that wasn't just insomnia or bills. One afternoon after work, I redrew a sketch I'd tossed months ago. A man hunched under a busted bus stop, shielding a toddler with a plastic bag. This time the proportions hit. The shading worked. Something clicked. And then, a DM. Love your line work. Would you be open to showing at our gallery? I stared at it, heart racing. It was the woman from the bus stop. Lila. She remembered me. Said she'd been watching quietly. Said my art had voice. Group show, she typed. 2 months from now. You bring 5 pieces. We'll cover your spot. 5 pieces. I typed back. Yes. Then sat very still for 10 minutes. Then whispered it out loud. Yes. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Not even Mom. Because a voice in my head still asked, what if this is a prank? What if it's just another setup to prove Dad right? But beneath that voice, something quieter stirred. Maybe this is how it starts. 5 pieces. It sounded doable in theory, like a homework assignment with no due date. But once I said yes to the gallery, the idea ballooned into something enormous. What do you even wear when your art might be seen by people who know what negative space means? I went into overdrive. After work, I'd spread out every sketchbook on my bed, floor, even the kitchen counter once. Dad didn't notice. He was too busy yelling at the microwave for not respecting his input. I had to pick 5. Just 5. But the moment I started narrowing them down, every piece suddenly looked like a middle school group project gone wrong. One had awkward hands. Another had too much white space. One drawing of a man on a fire escape looked less urban loneliness, and more fell asleep waiting for laundry. Still, I kept at it. Every night, sketching and reworking until my fingers smudged black. The cheap paper buckled under all the erasing. I burned through pencils like they were cigarettes. The apartment smelled like graphite and takeout. Mom noticed, of course. One evening she knocked gently on my door with a plate of grilled cheese and said, Don't forget to eat something that doesn't come in a wrapper. I looked up, bleary-eyed and surrounded by paper. You okay? She asked. I think so, I said. I'm just trying not to screw this up. She smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile people give you when they're proud. It was the kind that says, "I wish I could shield you from the part where you learn everything the hard way." "You won't," she said softly. "Even if you think you do." She didn't ask more. Just left the sandwich and quietly closed the door. Meanwhile, I told exactly no one else. Especially not Dad. It wasn't fear, exactly. More like, knowing how the scene would go. If I told him, he'd scoff. Maybe grunt. Maybe say something like, "Hope you remembered to sign M. At least then they'll know who to blame." It wasn't worth the oxygen. But things started slipping. One day he caught me coming home with a tube of rolled paper under my arm, rail drawing paper this time, from the fancy art supply store 2 towns over. The one where the employees wear aprons and the pencils are locked behind glass like jewelry. "What's that?" he asked. "Paper," I said, like I was describing smuggled uranium. He squinted. "You spending your paycheck on garbage now?" "It's not garbage." "Did it come with a job offer?" I walked past him. He called after me. "Better not be skipping shifts for this crap." I didn't answer. I didn't owe him one. At work, things were changing too. I caught myself noticing shapes and shadows even while unloading pallets. My art brain wouldn't shut off. The break room fridge? A perfect still life of neglect. My supervisor's posture? Pure sculpture. One night, after everyone else had clocked out, I stayed late sketching an abandoned dolly leaning against the cracked wall. It looked lonely. Like it had secrets. I added it to the maybe pile. Soon enough, I had 4 finished pieces stacked neatly in makeshift frames I built from cheap wood and leftover glue. The 5th was killing me. I tried 3 different ideas. None of them worked. One was too sentimental. One too abstract. One just looked like a foot wearing anxiety. And then, one Thursday night, I found it. An old self-portrait. Unfinished. Charcoal, rough edges, not flattering. My eyes looked tired, jaw clenched like I was bracing for a punch. I'd drawn it the week after Dad told me I'd never make it doing finger paintings. I almost tossed it. But then I looked closer. There was something there, anger, sure. But also survival. Honesty. I finished it. That became piece 5. I didn't know if anyone else would see what I saw. But for the first time, I didn't care. It was mine. The gallery was tucked between a vegan bakery and a place that sold nothing but imported socks. It didn't even have a real sign, just a tiny placard by the door that said, "Ness," like it was trying not to bother anyone. I almost turned around twice before walking in. Inside, the lights were soft and yellow, not the kind that hum like bad cafeteria bulbs. There was free wine in plastic cups and a table with crackers I was 90% sure were decorative. People were already milling around, tall glasses of people in tall glasses of clothes, whispering words like composition and spatial tension. I found Lila near the back, holding a clipboard and wearing the same no-nonsense ponytail from the bus stop. "You made it," she said, smiling. "I did," I replied. "Also, I didn't throw up, which feels like a bonus." She laughed. "Come on, I'll show you your wall." Your wall. That sentence short-circuited my brain for a second. And then, there it was. 5 frames. Hung straight. Lit softly from above like they mattered. The dolly. The fire escape. The boot. The man under the plastic bag. And the last one, me? I hadn't titled them. Lila added little placards anyway. Untitled I.V. by Milo Carter. It looked real. Like I'd stumbled into someone else's life. People stopped. Looked. Pointed. Not in a bad way, not in a "look what this idiot tried to pass off as art" way. More like they were actually seeing something. I stood off to the side, pretending to sip wine. A guy with a scarf and an accent said the boot piece had narrative tension. A girl in oversized earrings took a photo of the bus stop one and tagged the gallery. Then something wild happened. Someone asked to buy one. A woman in her 30s, high ponytail, too much confidence to be faking it, walked right up to Lila and said, "I want the 4th piece. With the umbrella. It feels tired in a way I relate to." Lila looked at me. I think she expected me to faint. I just nodded. She handed over a square card and a pen. I signed it. Right there. Like that was a normal thing I did. I've got a space above my desk, the woman said. Been waiting for the right piece. I didn't even know what to say. I think I blacked out somewhere around. Above my desk. It wasn't about the money. I mean, yeah, it was $180, which was more than I made cleaning the men's locker room for 6 hours, but it was the way she said it. Like I'd made something worthy of space in someone else's life. Lila clapped me on the back. Told you had a voice. That should have been the end of the night. Quiet high five, go home, make grilled cheese, maybe cry into the skillet. But then she added, by the way, heads up. Channel 7's doing a short piece on local artists. One of their people was here earlier, took some B-roll. Nothing major. Just background stuff. I blinked. Like? TV? Yeah. Just a community feature. They liked your sketch of the dolly, said it reminded them of the recession. Because nothing says artistic legacy, like a haunted warehouse cart. Still, I nodded. Cool. Chill. No big deal. I didn't tell Dad. Didn't mention anything to anyone. Not because I was hiding, just protecting it. Like a candle you cup with your hand until it's steady enough to burn on its own. Later that night, I went home, set the envelope of cash on my dresser, and stared at the receipt with my name scribbled on it in real ink. It wasn't a dream. It just felt like one. It happened 2 days later. I was on my break at the warehouse, shoveling cold pasta from a Tupperware container, and trying not to get sauce on my work gloves, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Bro, saw you on TV. Didn't know you were like a legit artist. A second later, a blurry screenshot followed, Channel 7 News, a 5-second shot of me standing in front of my drawings. The lower third caption read, Local talent, artists show meaning in the mundane. My first thought, oh no. My second thought, who gave them that angle? I look like I'm trying to smell my own chin. More messages trickled in. From Malik. Dude! You didn't say you were gonna be famous! From my old coworker Jamie. Wait, is this the same guy who once glued his glove to the janitor cart? And then, from my mom. Just a picture of the TV and 3 heart emojis. No words. Just that. That was enough. But I knew what was coming next, or rather, who? Dad didn't say anything the first night. Which, in our household, was a red flag waving from a flaming radio tower. I heard the news segment playing faintly in the living room, replayed at 11. The next morning, as I passed him in the kitchen, he grunted something that sounded like, Art boy. I paused. Morning, I said. He didn't look up. Just stirred his coffee like it had personally offended him. By dinner it cracked. So, he said over his meatloaf. You're on the news now. I looked up. Yeah. Just a local piece. Huh. He chewed like it was suspicious. Guess you finally got someone to fall for that artsy garbage. It wasn't about falling for anything, I said calm. It was a feature. On local artists. He snorted. Did they know you mop floors by day? Mom stiffened. Fork halfway to her mouth. I swallowed. Yeah. They liked that part. Said it made the art feel grounded. He laughed, the mean kind. So poverty's your brand now? I didn't rise to it. That took everything in me. I just said, they liked my work. That what you call it? He said. Work? Mom cleared her throat. They did a beautiful job with the segment. He shot her a look. Sure. Beautiful. You know who else made beautiful stuff? That guy who welded a toaster to a shopping cart and called it a statement on capitalism. I stood up. Plate untouched. I'm not asking for a critique, I said. You don't like it? Fine. But it happened. It's real. He didn't stop me. Just muttered. Don't come crying when the gallery stops handing out participation trophies. In my room, I sat at my desk and stared at the 5th drawing, the self-portrait. Still rough. Still raw. Still mine. That week, more DMs came in. One from a small publication asking for an interview. Another from a coffee shop that wanted to display local art. And one from a woman who'd seen my piece on TV and wanted to commission a drawing of her late husband's shoes, said they were the only thing he kept pristine. I took the job. Drew them with care. Each wrinkle in the leather, each scratch on the heel. I mailed it with a note that said, "They looked like they walked through everything and never apologized." She sent back a thank you card that smelled faintly of cinnamon and grief. It sat on my shelf next to my sketchbooks. Dad still hadn't brought it up again, the show, the news, the sale. Nothing. But now, when I came home late with charcoal on my hands, he didn't crack jokes. He just looked up. And then looked away. Like maybe he was starting to see the flame I'd protected, and didn't know what to do with it. Things didn't exactly blow up between us. They simmered. Which in many ways was worse. Dad stopped mocking me out loud, but he didn't exactly start believing either. He just let things hang in the air like a ceiling fan with a squeak you can't fix. He'd walk past my room, see me drawing, and say things like, "Wish I had that kind of free time," or, "Hope you're remembering to contribute to the electric bill with all that lamp usage." Classic Midwestern guilt, served lukewarm and with passive-aggressive gravy. One Saturday morning, I came home from a shift and found him in the garage, sorting through boxes I hadn't seen in years. My old school projects, childhood art supplies, even the handmade papier-mâché cat I'd made in 3rd grade that looked like an anxious lemon. I watched him toss it into a trash bag like it owed him money. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Cleaning out junk," he said. "Making room." "For what?" He didn't answer. But when I looked inside the bag, I saw my sketchbooks. Not the current ones, the old ones. My first ones. The ones drawn on napkins, receipts, paper plates. The ones that smelled like cheap glue and ambition. "Those aren't junk," I said. He shrugged. "They're collecting dust. You want 'em? Take 'em now or they're gone." I grabbed the whole bag, marched it to my room, and didn't say a word. But I was shaking. Not from rage. From something deeper. Something colder. It wasn't about a box of drawings. It was the reminder that in his world, if something didn't serve a function, or bring profit, it had no right to take up space. That night, I opened those sketchbooks for the first time in years. Some of them were bad. Like really bad. One drawing of our neighbor looked like a melting thumb. But others? Others had moments. Spark. Glimpses of what I was trying to say before I even knew how to say it. I kept them. Stacked them next to the thank you note from the widow. Next to the photo of the gallery night someone had printed for me. I was building something. And it was mine. Later that week, Lila emailed. Subject: "You free next month?" She invited me to submit again, a themed show. Lost and Found. I stared at the screen, grinning. I already knew what I'd call it. That Friday, I bought myself a small folding table from the hardware store and a little desk lamp. It felt stupid in a way. Like a kid building a fort and calling it a kingdom. But when I set it up in the corner of my room and flipped on that lamp, something shifted. For the first time, my workspace didn't feel like a secret. It felt like a studio. I printed a tiny sign for the table that said, "Milo Carter Studio," in Sharpie. And laughed. Because I knew if Dad saw it, he'd roll his eyes so hard he'd dislocate something. But I didn't care. That weekend I framed a new piece, one I'd drawn after the trash bag incident. It was an abstract, a single hand reaching up through shredded paper. I called it Recovery. Mom saw it on the table and just said, with that tight smile she used when she was proud but didn't want to jinx it. And then something else wild happened. I was tagged in a post from a small arts blog. 5 local artists to watch before they blow up. My name was third. I showed Mom. She gasped. I showed Dad. He grunted. Internet lists don't pay rent. Neither does watching game shows all afternoon, I said without looking up. That was the first time I saw him blink like I'd actually hit something real. Not out of cruelty. Out of truth. He walked out of the room without another word. I stayed. Kept drawing. Kept building. I didn't expect Dad to come to the second gallery show. To be fair, I didn't expect him to come to anything anymore. I'd stopped offering invitations the way people stop offering umbrellas in hurricanes. Eventually you realize some folks want to stay wet. But apparently Channel 7 reran the segment. Again. This time with a longer intro. I know that because on the night of the Lost and Found opening, right as I was hanging up my jacket at the gallery, I got a text from Mom. He saw it. Full segment. Didn't change the channel? I stared at the screen. Didn't change the channel? That was practically a handwritten letter in our family. The show was smaller this time, but more personal. People remembered me. A couple pointed at my piece, Recovery, and said, "Is that the same guy who did the shopping cart one?" It took all my strength not to scream into the catering table. Another woman, older, soft-spoken, asked if I ever taught workshops. I said no, but I'd be open to it. She handed me a business card. Something about art therapy for trauma survivors. I pocketed it like it was made of gold. That night, I sold 2 pieces. One to a guy who said he'd lost his brother, and the other to a woman who claimed she wasn't an art person, but still cried when she saw my sketch of an empty desk chair. Meanwhile, Dad didn't text. Didn't call. Didn't grunt anything sarcastic over dinner the next morning. Until that Sunday. We were sitting in the living room. He was half watching a rerun of some 80s cop show. I was flipping through a book on mixed media when he spoke, low and gravelly. "You think you're better than everyone now?" I looked up. "No," I said. "But I finally feel like I belong to somewhere." "That's different." Scissors replaced. I've rephrased this line below. Rewritten. "No," I said. "But this is the first time I've felt like I'm part of something that fits me. That's all." He snorted. "These people patting you on the back, they're gonna disappear when you hit a dry spell. Art's a fad." "No, it's just the first thing that's been mine," I said. "No one told me to do it. No one forced me. And when I do it, I feel like I exist." He stared at the TV like it was giving him moral support. Then said, "Just don't forget who fed you all these years." That one hit weird. Not because it wasn't true, but because it came with the unspoken clause, "which means you owe me." I stood. "I didn't forget," I said. "But feeding someone doesn't mean you get to define their life." "You fed me." "Sure. But you also told me I'd starve. So now that I'm not starving, you're mad the hunger didn't kill me." He didn't say anything. Just turned the volume up 1 notch. I walked out. And that was the moment. Not the shows. Not the sales. Not even the news segment. That quiet exit, without fear, without flinching, that was when things had shifted. The next week, I got an email from the Art Therapy Center. They wanted to invite me to speak, not as a celebrity, not as a viral artist, but as someone who made pain into process. "Your work says things people can't," the woman wrote. "We'd love to hear you say them out loud." I said yes. I printed the email and pinned it on the corkboard above my desk. The one that still said, "Milo Carter Studio," in crooked sharp letters. And just for fun, I added a sticky note under it. "This isn't a phase." It was supposed to be a filler piece. Just a short segment Channel 7 teased before their actual evening news. A feel-good spot about local voices, community talent, that sort of thing. I didn't know it was airing again. And I definitely didn't know they'd expanded it, added interview clips, lingering pans over the artwork, soft piano music underneath my charcoal-streaked hands. I was at the rec center, finishing up a mural I'd volunteered to paint in one of the kids' rooms, a skyline in crayon colors. I was in paint-streaked jeans, holding a roller, when my phone buzzed. "Malik. Wyo. You're on TV again." "Mom. Channel 7 right now." "You look so confident," smiling face with smiling eyes. And then, 30 seconds later. "Mom. He's watching." No emoji. That's how I knew it hit. Dad had been in his usual spot, front recliner, mug of reheated coffee, waiting for the weather report. Instead, he got me. On a 48-inch flat screen. Talking about art. Talking about how drawing helped me survive things I didn't even realize I'd been surviving. Talking about a father who didn't understand it. They didn't use names. They didn't need to. The camera lingered on. Recovery. Then on the boot sketch. Then on my face. Just long enough. When I got home later that night, the house was silent. Not like everyone's asleep. Silent, but the kind of silence where the air's waiting for something to break. Dad was in the kitchen. TV off. Recliner empty. Coffee mug untouched. He didn't look at me. Just said, "They interviewed you." I nodded. "They did." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something sharp. Or controlling. Or dismissive. Instead, he just exhaled. "They said people cried looking at your stuff." "They did." Another long pause. Then, like it was stuck in his throat, he said, "You speak well. Didn't know you could do that." I almost laughed. Almost. But instead I just said, "I never stopped talking. You just stopped listening." That one hung there. He nodded once. Not a proud nod. Not even a conceding one. Just a nod. A tired one. Like he knew whatever grip he thought he had on the story had finally slipped. And then he left the kitchen. Not dramatically. Just walked out. And that was it. No applause. No hug. No tearful change of heart. Just absence, this time chosen by him. I made a cup of tea. Went to my room. Turned on my desk lamp. And finished the last line of a new piece. One I'd started sketching on the bus, years ago, before anyone knew my name. This time it wasn't for survival. It was for myself. A week later, the community center framed my mural. Right next to it, a plaque with my name. Not future artist. Not trying to make it. Just Milo Carter artist. And that was more than enough.